Hello, hello. Welcome to an emergency episode of Northern Lights. I'm your host, Tanner, joined today by Marcus, Steve, and John. Hey there, everyone. How's it going?
Good.
Going good.
It's awesome. It's a crazy day.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to be recording with you guys outside of the usual Dabbler Depot studio and instead in the studios of each of our homes or our cars. We're super happy to be connecting with y'all. So thanks for signing in. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. The reason that we're here, the Office of Cannabis Management has sent notices to applicants yesterday, which is Wednesday, November 18th, letting 2/3 of social equity applicants know that their applications were denied. That is a huge chunk of applications to be denied right in that first swath. What are your guys' first initial reactions to that before we jump into some of the why they were denied and where we go from here?
The 1,200 applications, that's shocking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, but it kind of makes me think there were a lot of shady applicants. I mean, maybe some people just made mistakes, but from the article I read in MinnPost, it sounds like there were a lot of shady, potential bad actors trying to get access to the Minnesota market through licensing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we know our law made it open to everyone in the social equity round and in the next rounds. So I'm just interested to see who's in more so. Because like 2/3 is just so many.
Yeah.
Like the odds just went way up for anyone who's in though.
I mean, it's only one out of, it's almost like 50% chance of winning the lottery. Right?
Well, yeah, and I think for some of those categories, it got perhaps even better than that, where we were seeing, 1 in 3, 1 in 5 odds of that. And if we just had 2/3 of applications removed from that, like my eyes are on that micro business category, where I think we saw a lot of people come in because of that low application point. I'll be curious to see how many of those are stuck around. So let's talk about Charlene Briner was quoted in that MinnPost article. We'll put that in the show notes, so definitely check that out. But she listed 4 main reasons why applications were denied. The first one is simply that they failed to meet the qualifying standards set up in state law. More about that in just a couple moments. The second one is that they failed to provide documents that required they met those minimum qualifications, despite OCM's attempt to give them additional opportunities. This was during that deficiency notice period a couple weeks back. The third reason is that there were quote unquote inconsistencies in the ownership requirements and the true party of interest provisions. So in essence, they didn't really know who exactly the owners of businesses were, or maybe it looked like maybe people owned multiple businesses. Or then finally, there were those that engaged in fraud or what it feels to be zone flooding. We've heard mentions online of some businesses submitting 200, 300 some applications just for one business. So very curious to see all of those reasons being listed.
Is there anything in statute or any policy in OCM about zone flooding officially that they've talked about before now? Like, have they raised this issue before the licensing?
Not a ton. So we saw that true party of interest come up during that legislative session. People probably remember that's really limited who could be the actual owner of businesses and how many applicants they were able to apply for. So it's possible that here what we're seeing is someone who had over that 10% threshold applying for multiple different businesses. But we don't totally know yet. OCM hasn't told us a ton.
If people tried to do like the gaming that we all predicted, where they were just at that 10% for a number of licenses, and OCM decided we can't let that happen either, which that starts getting into the line of without rules, without like full policy, like how are these decisions?
What I've heard on that, more than like the 10% like minimum investor quantity, I've heard more like, I've got your back. I'm going in to get some licenses. You're going in to get some licenses. Like, fallback plan would be
Yeah.
10%. And that's like strength in numbers, you know, from certain communities that have known each other for a long time coming up in this space.
Yeah, I want to bring in a quote from Charlene Briner. And again, this comes from that MinnPost article, but she said, quote, "We saw a couple of hundred applications that were virtually identical, including the business plans and the projected profits for the first year. There were multiple people with the same address. They were using the same domain name that is unregistered and inactive. Some have a business number or a phone number that ties back to the same individual." So in short, we saw multiple people applying under the same sort of shell structure, which I think could hint at maybe people, you know, zone flooding, or, you know, having applications that are virtually identical. Perhaps it sounds like people were using templates, using guides. Yeah, very curious to see that one be one of the reasons cited. Go ahead, Steve.
I mean, that's stupid.
Well, we covered true party of interest on the show in the past, and I think if you go back a few episodes and listen to that, that is truly what we're talking about. I think zone flooding is slang because there is no predetermined zone.
For sure.
And flooding, obviously, we understand flooding as a term, but zone is vague, or zone is kind of where it gives them space to identify if there's high propensity of applications coming from a particular area.
Yeah.
And that was one of the qualifications to be a social equity applicant, is if you were a resident in a certain area that has high percentage of poverty for up to 5%, 5 years, consecutive years, right? So is that what they're meaning by zone flooding?
So my understanding of what they mean by zone flooding here is that you're having multiple people utilizing the same application data, perhaps using the same address that they're registered to, you know, using similar types of things on the application to make it seem like you have one person coming in and filling out a bunch of applications when really they maybe only should be qualified to fill out one application. I think of people who have, you know, created some really unique partnerships so that they're applying for one application and their friend's applying for an application and their friend and another friend. And somehow if any of those buddies got an application, suddenly I'd have a license. And I think OCM was looking for things like that. And maybe we're a bit overzealous in how they removed applications. More to come.
I know a lot of people like that what you just explained is exactly how they went about this process after the meeting at Sabathani earlier this year. Like people took that as a chance to like meet each other and like use, this word has terrible connotation, but like use as an opportunity to make cartels of how can we help each other? And it seems like all that backfired. All that had the opposite effect of what people were hoping for.
It seems like unique businesses are rewarded. Tanner, would you say from what you've seen and heard today that like the more unique, distinguished businesses are passing through this initial step?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we're still waiting for all that data to come out. We're in like the hours after this has been issued. It's still less than 24 hours out. But yeah, it sounds like the people that maybe worked 100% as an independent structure, submitted their own cap table as just the one person, didn't work with anyone else to get it. Maybe they made it through. But, you know, I think it's too early to really say definitively, because we also had some people that are, you know, getting deficiency notices for having incorrect cap table information and for not qualifying as a business owner when they're the only person who would be on that cap table. And then they receive no notice during that deficiency period when it seems like, man, if there was something wrong in the application, they really should have been notified. So I think what I'm hearing from a lot of people is just that there was a lack of communication around this. Maybe this was the right process, but man, someone should have let people know that.
So are you saying that some people who are going to receive these notices this week that they don't qualify, that they didn't receive the earlier round of deficiency notices?
Correct. Or if they did receive a deficiency notice, it was about something entirely different.
Something that they corrected?
Sometimes we're seeing people that maybe got a deficiency notice for like 1 or 2 things, but then on their denial notice, it had like 3 or 4 things listed.
Wow, that sounds like the OCM was making mistakes too.
Or they're taking
I think it's
liberty
communication
with the rules, and they're realizing what's the fastest path. What do I need to oblige by, and what are the statutes where I have to communicate, and they're incentivized to make this faster. People might push back and file a lawsuit, and so that's kind of the next topic in my eyes is like, does a lawsuit slow down the lottery, or if the lottery is coming soon, what happens after that?
Yeah. We're gonna play a brand new game on this podcast, and then actually go ahead, Marcus, and then we'll jump into our game.
I mean, what I read in the article, it made it clear, if it's accurate, that if you were informed that you're not qualified, you don't get a chance to appeal that decision.
Yeah,
you're just out.
Correct. Yeah, they have a
so
7-day
like lawsuits don't seem
period.
like they're gonna be. It's not gonna work.
Well, so, and that's the discussion, is if there was a lawsuit, it would likely be filing for injunction, saying that these people are qualified under statute, but that OCM made an administrative choice that disqualified them, but that it's not within their statutory authority to do that. You know, and maybe someone submitted an application with an ID and they said, you know, this ID was expired. They never reached out during the deficiency period, or maybe they submitted a paper ID and not the... I think there's so many things that go into question that I think an injunction to stop and evaluate, are there people that should be part of this process, could be possible.
That's why I asked earlier about like the if there's any policy or anything in statute with zone flooding, because using that as a reason, using something that could be seen as like, what's the word? Subjective. As reasoning to deny someone's application, I think that kind of lays fertile ground for someone to push for an injunction. So if OCM would have to get ahead of it and explain exactly, like they showed people why they denied their individual applications, but I think they could show people the process they use to go through these applications to calm some of that down, or else they will have 2/3 of the people getting rejected. Someone's going to be pissed and some lawyer's going to take that.
Yeah, I think they should make it extremely clear how they came to these conclusions, just for the sake of transparency and accountability that, you know, I'd say the public deserves.
Yeah,
because if there were applicants who really shouldn't have been disqualified or who didn't receive adequate communication, this should be a learning lesson for the OCM to do better going forward.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about, you know, moving into the future. All of these applicants are now included in round 2, you know, so they have to come back and fix their application in some way. And as we saw in MinnPost, they posted a copy of that denial notice. You got the category and you got fail. And that was it. You don't really know, you know, if I'm coming back for round 2, how am I going to fix this? And it looks like OCM really isn't going to be giving much more information on that.
You're playing Madden. You're playing Madden on expert. You know, this is there's no time for fake business. Like, get your business right. You've already paid the application fee, so it's not like it's another 10 grand. And you know, there has to be a cutting process, right? They have to cut the wood somewhere, and so they took a slice, knocked 2/3 off the tree, and like, you know, game on. Like, this is an exciting time. Like, the next 6 to 8 months will, as long as we don't see too much slowdown, I mean, we're going to see continuous onboarding of cannabis businesses.
So let's come around to that.
To be fully transparent, I was a part of an application and we didn't receive any deficiency notices or anything. So like when I saw this headline, I was a little nervous, like, but now I feel even fucking better, honestly. I'm like, shit. That the odds of winning the lottery are even better.
Yes. So
I'm sorry to laugh at those people who fucked around and got disqualified, but damn.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. I think that's I think there's a lot of people that are in your shoes right now, man. And that's looking at like what the next couple of weeks looks like. if you haven't yet received one of these denial notices at all to the email that OCM has on file, keep watching your email for the next 2 weeks, because you should be receiving an email that it looks like most likely will tell you you've been included in this first round of the lottery.
I think another thing we should address, which was mentioned in the article, is that some of the people who are going to receive these denial notifications, as long as it wasn't for a reason of fraud or some type of like shady fucking reason, they still, I believe, can potentially apply for a general like micro license, for instance. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they mentioned in the article that the OCM might explore ways to prevent the shady applicants from ever applying for any type of license in the future, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think that'll show a lot more goodwill also, where it's like, hey, calling people out and being more specific and doing the communication about the why, because I don't know how much OCM has their ear to the ground, but like people both who were denied and people who didn't even apply yet are all freaking out.
Yeah.
From everything I'm seeing online. Yeah.
I think it's fun. I think it's fun to see the Jeff Brinkmans of the world and the Sean Webers of the world coexist in this micro market of like different viewpoints, and like LinkedIn versus Reddit. And then you have the Facebook. A lot of the Facebook audience was like, they were like, I got a deficiency notice, but I got denied for this reason, like John was mentioning and Tanner added on to. Like, that's what I was seeing a lot in like the cannabis Facebook groups. And then last night it's like these keyboard warriors like threatening class action lawsuits on LinkedIn, and then you have Sean sticking up for the OCM, which is kind of his MO. But I hope it just keeps going, because you're still seeing new hemp businesses like 3 years in, so like if you're 6 to 8 months in with rec, like realistically there's going to be enough cannabis to go around.
So now it's time for the game that we were talking about earlier, guys. Injunction or no injunction? It's a pretty straightforward game where you get to guess before that lottery happens, which should be in the next like 16 days here. Do you think there will be court action that stops that? Or do you think the lottery will move forward? Who wants to go first on this guessing game?
Lottery moves forward.
All right. Steve says lottery moves forward. Who else wants
junction.
No junction.
I agree.
I don't see I see a lot of appetite to talk about suing the OCM. I don't see a lot of will to actually sue the OCM for an injunction in 2 weeks, having all your shit together. I think the people who are angriest aren't actually the ones who got denied. And the people who got denied are looking towards the next steps.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, if somebody did have the resources to actually file a lawsuit to get an injunction, wouldn't they be worried about, if at this later day when general licenses open up, if they decided to apply, wouldn't they be afraid that that could work against them?
Maybe, but
I mean, I know they're supposed to check their bias in this process, but these are human beings still.
What do you think, John?
I'll say, couldn't someone, if someone were to like go for an injunction, would all the licenses be stopped?
Yeah, so that would
or would it just be the pre-approval licenses is my question. Could we have the general licensing go through with rules promulgated and just like that? Because then it's just,
wow, that's such a great question.
Fucking our social equity applicants is all it would be doing.
Yeah, I think likely what it would be is that it would be a temporary injunction while people evaluate, like, did something wrong happen here? Are there people that should be included in this? I think if anything, it would delay it a couple of weeks. But no, I don't. I think it would probably just delay the social equity side. Probably not.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, couldn't that same person then just apply for a general license while holding up the social equity? Just apply for a micro license on the general side and be like, well, I got this license and I'm still pushing to get one on the social equity side.
I sure hope we don't see that. I hope that logistically either OCM or the courts figure it out quickly enough that we're able to just keep moving forward. And unfortunately, I think I gotta fall in the category of no injunction as well, because I've seen a lot of talk about court action. I think it's possible that we might see lawsuits filed. I think, will it stop the entire process? I think the odds of that are pretty low, unfortunately, for the people that are excluded.
I think one thing to consider is that this first round, lottery round, doesn't even like award the total number of social equity licenses that are going to be available. Like, for instance, if I remember correctly, the first round for social equity retail licenses was only going to do like 38 of them, right? And
Correct,
there's eventually going to be a total of 100 social equity retail licenses. So this isn't even this is just the first, not the last round for social equity licensing in this first year.
I just checked to see if the OCM is hiring currently, and there are no open positions available right now.
I mean, they're staffed up. They got over 100 people in there now.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Okay. So if they have the staff, then they should be able to run 2 tracks, social equity versus common license.
Yeah. It'll be... Yeah, I don't think we'll see an injunction. And if we do, they're going to have to find... we looked at the statute earlier. Like, OCM has a lot of breathing space, but in what they tell you and what they don't tell you about your application during the process. And I think they can always fall back on that. So someone would have to find something that we haven't in the law. And like I said, we're not fucking lawyers. Like, someone will take if someone can find something, they will take the case. Like, a lawyer will take this case because it's high profile. It's
John, I think we play pretty good lawyers on TV, though.
I was waiting for that.
Tanner, what was your first reaction to this story when it broke? How shocked were you?
Yeah, so when I started to hear that the denial notices came out, I think my initial thought was like, yes, this finally means we're moving forward towards a lottery. And I think I've heard from some people through the grapevine that maybe have gotten denied on their application for more of like a clerical thing. Not necessarily something that was wrong with the application itself, but like maybe the review looked at a provision and read, you didn't fully cover that. I'm disappointed that there's no ability for people like that to be able to really rectify it other than just, hey, come back for round 2.
I saw one that was the signature was missing. It was one of the 4 reasons.
Yeah, seeing stuff like that where like that type of stuff really should have come up during a deficiency notice. And if people really didn't get notified to this point, I think it's a bad look for OCM. I think if OCM is saying, hey, we're here for social equity, we're here to help people transition into this industry. This was a real life opportunity for them to help people transition into the industry. And if this is, if they're the teacher and they just failed 2/3 of their class, yeah, probably some of them deserve to fail, but I don't think it makes them look good at all.
That's a great way to put it. Honestly, I want to clip that. I think government chooses how much they want to engage with their constituents or the people that they're working for, in a sense. But it's like, we can't wrap OCM up in a 3-letter acronym and expect them to be super nice and like it's DEA, here we go. Like, this is an organization, this is a department that needs to be stood up, needs to have success, needs to move forward, have been given sharp orders, I would imagine, to get this thing done. I mean, it's written into law that this has to happen by the end of the year. So, as much as I want this to be warm and fuzzy, this really sucks and it's hard, and there's no good way to cut 2/3 of your applicants.
Yeah.
I mean, the article was kind of mocking. To me, it had a tone of mocking people who may have made simple mistakes in their application. Like, because they were emphatic about how we told everybody what was going to be needed in the application to be qualified, and we did a handbook.
Yeah, so, let's read the direct quote from
If you fucked up, you fucked up.
Yeah, here's the quote from Charlene. Quote, "Well, the disappointment is understandable. The basic proxy for readiness is your ability to submit a successful application. The state gave the answers to the test ahead of time." I don't know, man. I don't know. For 2/3 of the applicants, they didn't.
And it's just crazy because how many business guys like I need to fill out a fucking 40-page application, but it's like, oh, you actually don't know how to do the thing that you're an expert in because you can't fill out our fucking procedural application. And it's like, well, this has nothing to do. Yeah,
it is kind of worse than that though, because I did the application. There's a way where you don't even have to even give them all of that information. You at that time that you submitted the application, you just have to click a couple of boxes that say, "I attest to provide this information later on." Like you had to do the cap table, which sounds intimidating until you realize you got to give the name, social security number, contact information, and the percentage of ownership.
Yeah.
And to be a social equity applicant, the person who qualifies as a veteran, somebody who had a record or related to somebody, or lives in these poverty zones, that you got to have 60% ownership. So like, honestly, it wasn't that difficult for this stage of the pre-approval submission, because you get to go back later and provide a lot of that information, you know, and I'm not like listing everything that was required, but I mean, it did look intimidating at first, but once you get past your emotions and read it and follow the instructions, reread it several times. It really wasn't that difficult. Now, to come back later and supply your standard operating procedures.
You got 20 years in the game. You've been doing this.
You're the first man. It took me to the revisor's office, Marcus.
You're 20 years in, Marcus. Like
now you're making me sound like Charlene Briner in that article.
It's like you of all people, I think, know both parts of the game so well. Yeah.
But this is like a application for people that want to do business in a highly regulated market.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's really not as sweet and easy as people think. But this process, if you really wanted to make it through it, like the hard part comes after you win the fucking lottery.
Yeah. I think that's why I really agree with what Steve said earlier of like, it sucks, it's hard, but it is a step forward. In the end, we are making another step towards full recreational. And like, that's what we all want in the end. Like, it's not going to feel great all the time or make sense, but like, yeah, it is a step forward. What Charlene call it, another inflection point.
There we go.
Ooh.
An inflection
I mean, but if
point.
you didn't sign your application, that is on you.
That's it. Yeah, that's big business.
I'm sorry, not sorry. I mean, that shit was scary. So I can imagine people going through that shit. Like, man, I hope I can dot all my I's and cross all my T's, but I'm anxious as hell.
Yeah.
But the problem, though, if what y'all are saying is true, that some people didn't receive those initial deficiency notices, but then later received a denial for something that wasn't like pointed out as a deficiency, that seems to be a flaw in the review process on the OCM side, frankly.
Well, this is a story that we'll have to keep watching over the next couple of days, weeks, and months. I know we'll talk about it more on our full episode that will come out next Tuesday. But sort of before we wrap today, I mean, any final thoughts that you guys have as we end out our first emergency podcast of 2024?
Charlene, come on the show. Talk about it.
Right. Charlene, Jess, Marone, who's the
show.
chief legal counsel?
Eric Tobble.
Yeah, I said, come on. He's really
probably
busy.
very busy these days.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, we only want an hour of your time.
I would say that this makes the Minnesota craft cannabis industry stronger, and we're seeing that moat around Minnesota. And you know, if an Arizona applicant had over 200 applications, that's That's nearly 20%, or nearly 20% of the applications. So
that's bogus. Shout out to OCM for catching that bullshit.
They put the Minnesota in cannabis at this point.
Yeah, I'll be super curious to see what those numbers that come out, in 2 weeks are, and sort of what they show for that in-state, out-of-state. A lot still to be found out.
That's where we'll get real answers. Right now, it's just like bluster and fear. Like that's gonna actually show us something.
Well, so that feels like a good place to leave it. Let's talk about when are we going to know more answers? Well, Charlene said that within 2 weeks, so 2 weeks of yesterday, which is Monday, November 18th, we will know who is included in that lottery. So that brings us just to like the end part of November. And then she said the lottery will happen within 2 days of that. So we're looking at, December 5th, December. Yeah.
Between the 2nd and the 6th.
I mean, they're on schedule. They're on schedule. I'm excited to hear that there's a lottery date.
Yeah, first week of December.
Yeah.
Will there be a lottery viewing?
And that's what we still don't know. Still so many questions around the lottery.
No, they better do it over Zoom if there is.
I know. Lock the doors.
I want David Stern.
Oh. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining today. Thanks so much for signing in to react to some of this emergency news going on in Minnesota. Things are moving forward, that's for sure, and excited to see where it all moves forward too. So Steve, John, Marcus, thank you guys for signing on. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Everyone, thanks for signing in. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, on Facebook, on Reddit. Give us a follow. Go wherever you can find podcasts and subscribe. We drop emergency podcasts. You know that because you're listening to one right now, and who knows, we might have more in the coming weeks here. So
just 1 year after Aaron Dupree is back.
Just 1 year,
dude.
Hey, right? We should be interviewed on her podcast.
I want Marcus on that podcast.
No softball questions.
Thank y'all for coming. Have a great rest of your week. See you later.
Oh my God.